Hi there! Thanks again for joining us at Canyon Hobbies here on YouTube to do another repair with you. The repair we're doing today, as you can see, is going to be on this beautiful X-Maxx. It's an easy repair, but it's one that some people don't want to do just because they look at an X-Maxx and they're like, I don't want to take that apart. Well, we're going to show you just how easy it is to get the X-Maxx apart and change the servo. First off, as far as being prepared for this repair, well, there's just a few items. The X-Maxx, you'll be using the 2.0 and the 2.5 drivers. You don't really need any other drivers for this repair. Here's a servo. We're going to put the 2085X. Now, when it comes to servos, there's a few options out there. I personally like the 2085X. It's actually a great servo. It gives you a little more torque than the stock one, and it's also very strong, so it does last a long time. If you want something faster, there's ways to do that. Unfortunately, you sometimes you get a faster servo and you lose some of that strength and the durability of it. The servo does come with a new metal horn. I already have one on this X-Maxx, but I wanted to show you that because it is a nice new horn. Just doesn't flex like the plastic one that it comes with. You may need some Loctite. With my X-Maxx here, I do have an aluminum bell crank, which I'll use some Loctite when I get that put back together. And then a screw tray is always good. So let's jump right in. We'll get started. One thing I do want to get you guys used to that are out there that are working on Traxxas vehicles. Traxxas has a great, on their website, it's a real easy tool. You can go into any vehicle and get exploded views. The exploded views at the end of them, like with the X-Maxx, it'll show you the fastest way to take the X-Maxx apart. They do have sections in this vehicle, so you have the rear section, the middle section, and the front section, and with minimal screws you can take those sections apart, which makes working on them a lot easier. So this repair will be taking the front end apart, and I'll actually get out an exploded view and show you that. Alright, so what I want to show you here in we call it our Traxxas Bible, but you can call it whatever you want. But here in that, I wanted to show you that it does have, in the exploded views at the very end, it has a modular assembly. Now this is good not only to teach you how to take it apart quicker without taking a million screws out, but it also will give you the size of the screws that you're taking out. So when you go to put it back together, it's going to be easier. You're going to have that size of screw available right there. I always recommend having this out while you're doing the job. I've done it a million times and I still use it just because sometimes I forget that a 20 mil screw goes here. So always have it out. Make sure you're putting the screws back where they're supposed to go. Let's get started taking it apart. The first thing I like to do is take the servo horn, or the arm that connects the servo horn to the bell crank. Take that screw out first, just so you don't forget when you're taking it apart.
This charger is bad. I need to charge it.
And keep that screw. As you can see, mine has Loctite on it. It's because I'm going into aluminum. Anytime you go into metal, use Loctite. Going into plastic, you're not going to need it, but anytime into metal, please use Loctite. The other thing I like to do is prop it up on something. In this case, we're going to put it on a little battery box, and then I'm going to take the tires off. Blam, tires off. So now we'll just start with looking at our guide. We will see that the first couple screws we want to take off on the top are these ones here. So I'll get all these screws out of the top. Just refer to your guide for what screws those are. Now for the fun part. So after you get your, what, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 screws out, you can take the front end off. This is kind of the fun part. You get to just yank it until it comes apart. And there you go, the front end is clear. You can set that aside for now because we don't need it in our way as we're gonna finish getting to the servo. One thing I like to do before I get to the servo, just so I don't forget and yank any wires, I like to take the receiver box off at this point and take the servo wire loose. That way we don't mess up any wires. I mean, in this case, we're not too worried because we're going to be replacing the servo, but if there's times where you're just repairing something and the servo's got to come out of the way, be sure to take the wires out so you don't end up breaking those wires and causing yourself more grief. And sometimes take the cover off, and then you do got to take this other cover off. That's what holds the wires, keeps them waterproof, at least water resistant. It'll keep the water out of your electronics. So you want to make sure you keep this stuff in good repair so that water doesn't make its way into your receiver box, especially if you're the one that likes to use your X-Maxx to go across water. I'm not that guy, so I don't have to worry about that. So with that, the servo will always plug in to number 1. You got on a Traxxas receiver, you'll have 2 number 1 slots. It doesn't matter which one it's plugged into, but that's the one you're going to be unplugging, the one that's in the number 1 slot. Just take that wire loose, pull it all the way out to here, just so it's ready to go when you get to the servo. And then we'll flip it over, and just a few more screws, we'll have this cover off, and we'll be able to see the servo, and we'll get her changed out. All right. So we're to the servo. Now there's a few reasons we'd be changing a servo, right? Some of the diagnostics things to look at or think of. Obviously, if your truck's not steering, that leads to the servo, right? But there's other things that some people ask about that come in to our shop when they're asking for a repair. One is it'll turn part way and then it starts to click. Most of the time that's a gear in the servo that's stripped out, so it'll turn part way and it'll start clicking because it's trying to turn further but it can't. That's a good sign that the servo gears are stripped, and they do make servo gear kits. On this servo it is stripped, but I'm just going to upgrade it to the metal gears. The X-Maxx comes with a plastic gear servo. It's a pretty tough servo, but plastic gears tend not to make it when you're bashing like I do. So we're going to go to the metal gear servo, which makes it easy because I don't have to take the servo apart. That'll probably be another repair we'll do. We'll do a gear change on a servo so you can see how that's done. But for now, we got 3 screws left and the servo is out. And it's just as easy as taking it out. And now, since I had the wire loose from the top, I can just pull it out without having to worry about hurting the wires. This servo is still good as far as the motor goes, but the gears are stripped. So this might be one. We'll do another video and I'll show you how to change those gears out. But for now, we'll take the horn off and get it ready to put the new servo in. As you can see, I've upgraded the horn already. So it's ready for this new Metal Gear servo. Alright, so let's put the new one in. There's only one way to put it in. Traxxas made a little cutout, so it's hard to get this part wrong, but just first start with your wire, stick your wire in as far as you can get it, and just plop the servo in there. It should fit snug, and we'll put the screws back in. Let's pause right there. Alright, so now that we got the servo mounted, this next step is kind of the most important step as far as getting the servo centered. We want to do that now so we don't have to worry about it not being centered once we get it all together. So to do that, and what I mean by centered is when you turn on your vehicle, your servo goes to center when it turns on. And that's what we want. We want our tires to be straight when the servo is centered. So doing it now centers that servo so that when we put the wheels on, they're going to be headed straight. And that's what we want. So to do that, we want to connect the servo back up. So we'll do that now. And you go, make sure you go under there so that that wire is protected from moisture getting in. And honestly, once I get that in like that, I put this part back on so it's out of our way, it's together, we don't have to worry about this part anymore. So click that back on, grab your screws that you had, we'll put this back together real quick. And then again, it doesn't matter which number one you plug it into. You do have to look really close to see the channels, but on a Traxxas, just know that there's two channel ones. They're both the bottom two channels. Your negative's going to always be on the outside of a Traxxas receiver. Honestly, any receiver, your negative's on the outside. So your white is your communication, and then you got your positive negative of your power. So we're going to plug it back into the same one it was in, and we're going to see that that's plugged in nice, make sure everything's plugged in nice there, and then we're going to power the truck up. So I have batteries here, we'll just plug them in real quick. Nice thing is our tires are off, we don't have to worry about the truck running away. But what we want to do is make sure that our remote on our steering trim is right in the center. Center that, turn the truck on, your servo is going to go to center. And once you have it there, you can turn it off. Just that easy. So now our servo is centered, and now we just need to center our servo horn on the servo. And when we get it all put back together, we might just have to have a little bit of trim, but the wheels are going to be pretty well headed straight. On the X-Maxx, the servo horn, when you go to put it back on, with the servo centered, is going to be sticking straight up. So you want to find the teeth that make it so it's sticking the most straight up as you can. So, and what I mean by straight up is, if we're looking at the bottom of the car, the horn piece is going to be sticking up in the air towards the top of the car. So now that since I'm upside down, that's going to be facing down, but when the car's upright, that's going to be facing up. So try to get that facing up as best you can. You're not going to get it perfect because the teeth, there's not enough teeth on it to get it perfect. As you can see, I just go one tooth and it's off the same distance each way. Just try to get it as centered as you can. And then because we're going into metal now, we're going to want to put Loctite on this screw. Loctite the screw. Blue is plenty. I Loctite. I wouldn't use anything other than blue on this because unfortunately on an X-Maxx, the servo is one of those things you'll probably play with a lot. So you don't want to have red Loctite on there. That makes it hard to get apart next time. Go ahead and tighten that up, tight and secure. And then we'll put the bottom back on. And remember, and it's easy to tell because those two screws aren't going in anything. But those are the two screws that'll hold our front end on. So just put the 6 screws that you took off here. These screws are all the same length. When you look at your booklet on the breakdown, those screws are going to be 14 millimeter. So they're 4 by 14. Those are all going to be the same. I try to keep track, just keep them kind of separate when I keep them in my, or put them in my parts tray. But if you lose track, just get a ruler, and on a ruler you're going to have one side that's inches, you're going to have the metric side on the other side, and each one of those dashes is a millimeter, so you can actually hold the screw up and measure 14 millimeters, and I'll show you that. Alright, so now we got that cover on. The next step is to get the drive line in. I guess kind of a cheat since I've been doing it so long. Sometimes when you pull this drive shaft out, there's a coupling back here on the rear end that you'll pull with it. If that happens, it's obnoxious, but it's easy to fix just by taking the gear cover off. And then you can kind of see your drive shaft and get that coupling back in. Mine stayed in, so I'm kind of lucky. So as long as you got that on the coupling, you know it's in there, then we can put the front end back on, and we'll put some screws in and we'll be out to driving. All right, now that we got the front back on, all the screws back in. Now, I did that a little quick, but anytime you take your vehicle apart, it's a good opportunity to clean things up. If you got rusted screws, get some black paint, spray them, make it look nice again. It's something I like to do anytime I take a vehicle apart. Get those screws looking nice, get everything cleaned up, and then it drives better after that, right? The last part we got to hook up our link to our bell crank. There is kind of a trick to it, but it's kind of mostly just being a little bit patient. You want to make sure that link goes in there. Because we're going into an aluminum bell crank, if yours is the plastic one, you don't have to worry about this, but anytime you go into metal, like I said, Loctite. Let's get a little bit of blue on there, and we'll get this servo horn and link put into the bell crank. Sometimes just a little screwdriver to keep that up in the air, and just use your hand to turn your bell crank to the link. Sometimes that's all you need to get it on. Be patient with it, sometimes it takes a second. And tighten that up. And that's it, folks. We'll put the tires back on and we'll be out on the road again. We appreciate you watching this repair. Keep watching repairs. We'll start doing more and more. Again, like I said, I'll do a servo gear replacement. It's a pretty easy thing to do that can save you a lot of money. Gears are 1/10 of the cost of a new servo, so keep that in mind when you're doing a repair. If your motor's good in the servo, change the gears out. It's not a big deal. And on the X-Maxx servo, I brought one here just to show you. This is the stock servo, so it has the stock motor, but I've upgraded the gears to metal. So it's not quite as strong as the servo we just put in, but with the metal gears, it holds up really well, and it still is a pretty tough servo. So that's other options too to save money, get your truck up and going, and make it last a little longer when you're out bashing. So we'll see you out there on the hills and bashing. Check in with us again. We appreciate you watching.